Good evening, welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans for fans, where all the content is absolutely free, coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. I'm your host tonight, Brian Archer, and as always, we would encourage you to get onto the Gersnet website and check out our forums for all your latest Rangers news and discussion. We're live tonight on the YouTube channel, and we'd ask that you continue to share the pod on social media, spread the word, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Before I introduce my guests for tonight, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the pod. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. They also have a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand, and for more information on that, email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Right, now to bring in my guests, joining me tonight is David Fraser. David, how are you doing?
Evening, Brian. Evening to all the viewers and listeners. I'm doing not too bad. Hope you're doing well, Brian.
Yeah, all good here. And also joining us tonight is Rob Fawcett. Rob, how's things?
Good, mate. I'm good. How are you? Just like David said, hope our listeners are doing good as well.
Yeah, all good here. Also, we'll want to talk about the game on Saturday against St Mirren. Rob, I'll come at you first. The first thing I wanted to touch on was the team selection. There was a few kind of surprises in there. Clement choosing to rotate his squad a bit. Scott Wright coming in for Ross McCausland, Dessers coming in for Silva, and Sterling in for Matondo. Were you surprised with the starting 11 at all?
I wasn't surprised that there was changes. I think I was surprised to see Dujon Sterling start on left wing, which was an interesting position. I know the young man's versatile, but I thought that was probably a stretch too far for him. You kind of thought that Goldson was going to come back in after the suspension against Hibs. Wright coming in for McCausland. I think the manager's trying to give him some minutes to see what he can do for the squad. And then I think after the Hibs game, Dessers probably deserved to start because it was another good goal for him on the Wednesday night.
I think that was a bit of an experiment from Clement with Sterling playing left wing. It did seem to catch everyone out by surprise. I'm not quite sure it worked. What did you think about that one?
It was bizarre because again, I think we'll touch on the game. I think Sterling's value is the presence that he brings in midfield. He's not particularly blessed with skill or a wee trick to beat a man. So sticking him out wide left was a bit of a head scratcher. I think that the one thing that I would say is the difference is I've actually got faith in this manager. If it was any other manager, I might have probably been a little bit more upset. But I think Clement has built up the good faith with the support so far in the decisions that he's taken. So it was one of those ones where you've got to trust the manager. I hope it's the last time that we see him out there because he's much more effective in the middle of the pitch where, his physicality, his recovery pace, his presence can help us dominate midfield, which was one of the areas that we're lacking in that first half, as I'm sure we'll talk about.
David, on that point about it potentially being the last time we see Sterling out left kind of midfield, I do wonder if that team selection gave us a bit of an insight into how Clement kind of might set up away from home. Maybe not so much with Sterling left wing, but potentially a more robust midfield, certainly with Sterling, Lundstrom and Raskin. Do you think he's kind of given us a bit of an insight into how he intends to set up away from home?
It's difficult to say, Brian. I think the manager's very much a pragmatist in terms of horses for courses. Stephen Robinson is no mug. He's been on the block before in Scottish football. He knows how to set a team up. And he knows how to set a team up to spoil in terms of the physical engagement side of the game. So I can only imagine that was uppermost in his thinking in terms of deploying Dujon Sterling wide left and affording Nico Raskin his favourite position in the centre. So only time will tell whether he sticks with that. Two holding midfielders, that kind of lowish defensive block, to use kind of the current parlance, away from home. But I think it's very much a case of he picks the relevant personnel, allowing for who's available for selection given the opposition the team faces. So we'll only find out in due course, Brian.
It definitely seems to be adaptable. This manager, which I think was one of the things we heard about him before he was appointed. Rob, you mentioned Dessers' goal earlier on. That's now 3 goals in his last 3 games. The thing that's kind of particularly impressed me is the last 2 goals that he's scored have been really composed finishes, which isn't something we've always seen from Dessers. Have you seen what a difference confidence makes in a striker?
I think we are. I'm still going to say I'm not entirely convinced that we can ever run him as the main striker to be relied upon for the remainder of the season. But the one thing I do love about him is every time he steps on the pitch, you're going to get a good shift from him. He's going to give you 100% when he steps on that park. He keeps putting himself in the position to create chances and at least have a strike on goal. And I think the last couple of games have shown both the good and the bad. It was a great touch to round the keeper and a really composed finish against St Mirren. Same on Wednesday against Hibs, a cracking finish, but equally he's missed probably an easier chance, 1-on-1 with the keeper, which is the good and the bad of Dessers kind of in one game against Hibs, and it's difficult because he seems like such a likeable guy, but I think the biggest difference is the management style. You can see Clement is a great man manager, but the looks of it, every time a player is coming on or going off that pitch, there's an embrace, there's instruction, there's feedback, and I think players respond to that. And I definitely think if Dessers can continue to improve at the rate he has been since Clement's come in, then he will become a player that we potentially could depend on. He's still scoring goals, he's still creating goals. So long may that continue, and if we can enhance that, forward line with another striker who's going to get us some more goals, then we'll be in a really good position for the second half of the season.
David, quite a lot of fans would have been quite happy to see Dessers depart the club this January window, but he really seems to have turned things around. Does he start to change your opinion on him?
Well, like Rob said there, his application is such that you can buy into the levels of improvement that he's showing. I think, to be fair, his performance in Seville against Betis, I think that was maybe a watershed for him. I know he kind of toiled going forward at Parkhead, and especially in light of what he achieved in Seville, with a well-taken goal that, the expectations had been raised because of how he took that goal, and maybe the odd fan was maybe a wee bit disappointed how he went about the game at Parkhead, and he looked back to kind of like the kind of ponderous Dessers that we'd seen earlier. But I think we'd seen enough in his recent performances before the winter break, or before the game at Parkhead, that there was enough there to suggest that he was possibly worth persevering with. And I think to be fair to Cyril, he's never had. I mean, he's obviously he's presumably got some broad shoulders, because he wouldn't be human without reacting to the kind of the disquiet in the stands. And he's not daft. He's been on the block before. He's been abroad. He's played in Belgium, played in Holland, played in Italy. So he's long enough in the tooth to see that there's potential foibles amongst any given club support. So he's applied himself. He makes decent runs. Even early on in the season, he's seen the odd glimpse that he had a reasonable idea of what to do. But then, and conversely to that, you'd see him tripping over the ball and such like. So to try and come at the point, Brian, his recent performances, I mean, his composure the other night at Easter Road was really, it was a smartly taken goal. He did well yesterday, and obviously showed a ton of speed. I think the most heartening thing for most fans would be that he looks to have sharpened up by at least a yard. So that injury that he was presumably carrying from his time at Cremonese is presumably cleared up to a significant amount that's maybe freed him up in terms of his movement. So let's hope that there's more to come from Surreal and that he can go on to become, again, I agree with Rob here. I don't foresee him being a first choice Rangers centre forward in the long term, but he could well turn out to be a useful squad member, because 12 goals at this juncture in the season isn't to be sniffed at, and his performances and his statistics are up there with other strikers in the league that a lot of fans would have as cover.
Yes, definitely huge improvement. Rob, another player I wanted to touch on was John Lundstrom. Another terrific assist from him at the weekend, similar to kind of the one on Tuesday night or Wednesday night against Hibs rather. There's no doubting that his form's improved massively since Clement arrived, and it's clear from the way that Clement speaks about him that he thinks highly of him. For you, is he proven himself worth a new contract?
I think if he keeps this form up, then you'd have to say yes. He'd be a big miss in the middle of that pitch. I think the worry is always, we see this with Lundstrom from time to time where he has a bit of a purple patch. But I think, again, it's clear when you listen to the players that the manager's got a lot to do with the way that all of these players are improving and how much he's getting out of them as a squad. And I think a lot of it is because he seems to be making it very clear on what every player's job is on that pitch. Whereas previously, it was probably left to them to work out their own game plan as they were on the park and trying to react to the opposition. I think the great thing to see in the last few games with Lundstrom is he's actually trying to have a dig from distance now. He's a couple of them have been fairly well off target, but you can at least see that there's a willingness to push forward and at least have a dig from the edge of the box. You're right, both assists, against Hibs and yesterday against St Mirren were lovely little dinked balls, and if we can see more of that, especially with some of the new recruits that are potentially going to come into the team, that kind of running from deep and breaking the lines is going to be key. And if we can get Lundstrom doing that on a regular basis, it's going to be a positive for us. I think the question becomes, how much would it cost to replace him? And that's the question that you've got to ask yourself. It's clear that he loves the club. It's clear that Clement loves him and sees him as one of his leaders on the pitch. So it would make sense that if the deal's right, that we tie him down to a new contract. And if he continues to perform this way, you never know. There could be another move in him. So you could at least get some funds in the door for him at some point if we think that it's the right time to let him go.
Yeah, that's a good point actually about getting him tied down potentially to make a profit on him later down the line if he keeps this form. I never actually thought of that. I always kind of thought that if he's signing a contract, it might be his kind of last big contract, but he's probably young enough that he's got another big move in him if he keeps this form up, and we can tie him down to a longer deal. Dave, another player I wanted to touch on, and we've kind of run out of superlatives to describe him, is Jack Butland. Now, there's not much more we can say about him that we've not already said, but he made two crucial saves again at the weekend in the first half to keep us a goal up. Is he becoming just another goalkeeper that we can add to that ever-growing list of outstanding Rangers goalkeepers?
I think he's proved his worth already, Brian. I think there's too much more to add to that. I think he's certainly taken on the mantle of the Rangers goalkeeper extremely well, and you can only afford due credit to Michael Beale for signing him. I think that's been lost, somewhere along the line, rightly or wrongly. Michael Beale pursued him, obviously identified him and realised that he had the makeup to take on that responsibility. Yesterday, obviously, he does the basics well. He closes down angles well, albeit, I think the lad Jamison shot straight at him and he should have scored, truth be told. But, obviously Jack's there to make saves. He's an organiser. He's vocal. He's got presence. And I was saying this to Ballman during the week. If there's a better British goalkeeper operating in Britain, I'd like to see him. I mean, the Gareth Southgate obviously prefers Jordan Pickford ahead of him. I mean, Jordan Pickford must be some goalkeeper if he gets a game ahead of Jack Butland for England. And you could even extend that to Eric Ten Hag when he was on Man United's books, albeit in a loan situation, that they saw fit to go out and spend, upwards of £45 million on Onana. I mean, that's a head scratcher, because Jack's form's been excellent. He's never let us down. You've never really seen any kind of chinks in the armour of his makeup. I think he's maybe flapped at one cross that I seem to recall early on in the season. Other than that, I think he's been. And I hope I don't jinx him here. His performances have been of the requisite level and some. He inspires confidence in the back line. I think he's seen yesterday. There's obviously some foibles still in that centre half partnership, regardless of who the personnel may be. And yet Jack's there to save their blushes. Long may it continue, Brian.
Absolutely. Rob, he was the one player that earlier in the season, when things weren't going so well, he was the one player that you could still say was, performing at a good standard and an acceptable standard in the first part of the season when things weren't looking so great. Is there any concern for you about our ability to hang on to him in the long term, or are you quite comfortable that if and when he does leave, should be for healthy profit?
I think it's interesting because if you listen to what he said in some of the interviews, he's bought into the club big time, and I think he's caught the bug. And when that happens to a player, regardless of what team comes in looking for him, unless it is maybe one of the top 5-10 clubs in the world, they're not going to move anywhere else. Where else are you going to get regular European football playing in front of 50-odd thousand fans every other week, winning trophies? And playing in a stadium like Ibrox? Not many clubs out there have that to offer. And at his stage in his career, I think it's more about the medals that he can gather rather than actually how much more money he can stick in his bank account. And it's a bit like Defoe. Defoe came up the road because he wanted to play for Rangers. He wanted to be part of that Gerrard team, and he wanted to deliver a trophy because it was something that he felt that he was lacking in his career. And if there does become a big offer in, because ultimately every player at Rangers has got a price, and that's the sad fact of it. We've got to kind of take the emotion out of it and look at what's good business for us. We've still got wee McCrory there, who I think could be a long-term decent alternative for us, but personally, I couldn't see Butland going anywhere at the moment, just based on what he said, the relationship he's got with the fans, where he is in his career, and the club that he's sitting at the moment, with the opportunity to continue to be fighting for trophies year on, year in, year out. He's spent enough time at lower level English league clubs without the chance to win anything. He's now at a big club where he's got the chance to be fighting for trophies every year. And I think you can, the performances that he's put in this year have been brilliant, because he's not called into action a lot, but when he has been, he's more than stood up to that test. So I think, the points that yourself and David made there around the required performances, he's been the standout bit of business over the summer for us.
Yeah, you've kind of got to think that, as you say, at his stage of his career, that opportunity to win trophies, play in a stadium like Ibrox and play in Europe's got to trump potentially any move to a kind of mid-table Premiership side at this stage. But I guess we'll wait and see over the next months.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
And I think another thing to bear in mind is whether he's settled or not. I think that John Lindstrom falls into a similar bracket. By all accounts, Jack's moved his family up, his kids up. So you've got a young family, and if he's settled. And I think John Lindstrom's the same. I think his daughter was born in Glasgow. So, there'll be a reluctance to uproot the family to move elsewhere, especially when there's the unknown of whether a move might not necessarily come off. You know, it's better the devil you know, and if you're getting remunerated to a level that you feel that you're worth, then like Rob rightly mentioned there, what other incentives could there be to move on for Rangers? But, you know, especially players like Lundstrom and Jack Butland, who have experienced the English Premier League and are not necessarily, you know, in the international picture where that demand of being at a club in the top six in the English Premier League in order to secure regular international football would be placed upon you. So I think that's I would imagine would be quite important to bear in mind with regards to whether assessing whether Butland might be at the mercy of moving on. It may well be that, you know, the club might indicate a willingness to sell him in the future, and he may well say, well, you know, if you can make the sums work in other ways, you know, I'd be prepared to stay. It can only be good news for us as supporters.
Yeah, the family point's an interesting one. It's probably something that we as fans forget, that footballers have families, and we kind of think that they just, you know, they move across countries and continents without even thinking about it. But sometimes they do kind of choose to stay where they're most settled at. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. Obviously, we hope that we can hang on to him for a good bit longer. So before we go on to discuss the second half, let me give a shout out to our friends over at Football Prizes. They're currently running a competition to win a signed 1972 Rangers shirt signed by the Champions squad and an Andy Gorham signed and framed Rangers t-shirt. For more information on how to enter, please visit footballprizes.co.uk/product/Rangers-squad-shirt. Now, Rob, one of the things that caught my eye was the half-time substitutes that Clement made. They made two changes at half-time, bringing Cantwell and Wright off and Lawrence and McCausland on. Were you surprised to see a double change so early?
No, I was just surprised at the personnel, to be honest. I think one of the big problems in the first half was the middle of the park, and I was expecting him to maybe drop Dujon Sterling in there and bring Raskin off, to be honest, because I thought Easter Road and yesterday, you know, he wasn't kind of up to the same level as a performance that we'd seen before he got injured. Now, he's still finding his way back into the team, so you can cut him a bit of slack from that point of view. Wright, I think, was probably a good sub because I'd actually forgot that he was actually on the pitch. So getting McCausland on to give us a little bit of life on that right hand side was a good move. I think the major surprise was the Cantwell one. He obviously came off at Easter Road at half time with a bit of an niggle. So it's whether there's any underlying injury problem there that Clement's trying to protect him from, or is it that Clement is expecting more of him, as we as fans probably are in some of these games? Now, I love Cantwell as a player. I think he can be a great player for us. I think the frustration is that in some of these games, you know, when you expect him to step up to control a game, he kind of splits in and out. We saw what he's capable of at Easter Road with that fantastic goal. We just want him to do that more often. And I think that as a fan, that's my frustration at the moment, that he is the type of player that probably could grab a game by the scruff of the neck, but he doesn't do it often enough. So changes were required at half time. The thing that I love about Clement is he's not scared to make them. You know, it's been 2 or 3, 4 occasions this year where if something's not working, he's changed it. He's not got the arrogance to stick with a team for the sake of saying, well, you know, I thought it was a great idea, so I'm going to continue with it. He's quite happy to make changes as they're required. And I think players will understand as well that if they're not up to the required performance levels, you've got people on the bench that are quite happy to come on and take your place. You know, you're not going to get a 60, 70 minute game here if you've done bugger all in the first half. You're off at half time and you need to go back and prove yourself in the training ground to get that starting berth again.
Yes, definitely refreshing to see a manager change it so early when he recognises that things aren't maybe going the way he wants, or players aren't performing at the level that he wants them to. David, is there ability to bring on two players the quality of Lawrence and McCausland a sign of an improvement in the squad strength and depth? You know, it wasn't that long ago that our subs bench was looking pretty sparse, but to be honest, when I looked at it on Saturday, you know, we had Matondo on there, We had McCausland on there, we had Lawrence on there, we had Silva on there. You know, it looked a pretty strong bench. Are we now seeing, with players coming back from injury, are we now seeing an improvement in strength and depth?
I think you've got options, Brian. I'm not overly convinced as to the levels of quality of those options, but bodies, you know, are undoubtedly going to enhance the manager's ability to change games. You know, so yeah, I think you've seen yesterday the difference that Tom Lawrence made. You know, especially trying to link and with Dessers, because it was glaring in the first half that Cyril was very, very isolated. Todd Cantwell again, you know, whether he's carrying an injury or no, I'm not entirely sure. I think that the manager may well be trying to protect him publicly, even though I strongly suspect that he's maybe less than impressed with his performance levels, because it's a bit strange that, you know, a player would be substituted at half-time on Wednesday night, and Iggle being offered up as the reason as to why he was substituted to possibly disarm questions in the press in the aftermath of that, and then for him to start the next game, and then to fall Fowler, you know, being hooked at half-time yet again. So I'm not convinced that an injury would necessarily explain that away, but you've seen yesterday that Lawrence had a bit more about him in terms of trying to force the issue. I think, you know, Todd was guilty yet again yesterday of kind of flitting about the kind of extremities of the game, which in a game like yesterday at Greenhill Road, where, you know, St Mirren are going to try and be stuffy, certainly in that middle area, then you're looking for your more offensive players, you know, that have got the skill set to unlock a stuffy midfield and a stuffy defence to come to the fore. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, Todd found it difficult to have an impact in the game yesterday. Tom Lawrence, again, he's obviously coming back from injury. He's still struggling to make an impact, but you've seen the intent there. The intent was, well, to my mind anyway, was certainly a wee bit more focused than how Todd went about his work in the first half. You mentioned there Rabbi Matondo. Again, Rabbi Matondo he's got attributes that the manager obviously looks to utilise on any given occasion. And Ross McCausland, I think you've seen yesterday that, you know, his, again, intent for how he went about his work, certainly in the early passages of play in the second half, that he looked hungry to make an impression, and almost as if to say to the manager, I think you slipped up, Gaffer, by, you know, promoting Scott right ahead of him in the game. And I think you've seen yesterday that there was elements of improvement that we're looking for a young player like Ross McCausland, whereby he was certainly more disciplined in tracking back and doing his defensive duties going back the way. So, to come to the point, I think that, you know, the bodies coming back are certainly going to give the manager more options, and the fact that everybody's getting a game and the manager keeps everybody in the squad involved means that there's competition for places, and that can only augur well for the performances of the squad going forward.
Rob, on Tom Lawrence, do you think that role of him coming off the bench could be a really useful one? The thing I noticed on Saturday was he seems to have that really unique ability to find space where it doesn't look like there is any, and I think that's important against teams like St Mirren, where they come and kind of try and sit in and we really need to break them down. And I think it can be particularly useful bringing him off the bench when the opposition's potentially tired, and he's got that ability to find space in those pockets, and he's also not afraid to take a shot on, which I like. You think that could be his kind of role as maybe an impact player, given that he's struggled with his fitness?
I think the first point is that the only time he's struggled with his fitness has been at Rangers. So I think if we can get him past that, there's no reason why he shouldn't be pushing for a starting position. You know, he's a player of quality. We've seen it for, you know, the many years he was at Derby, that he was a decent player and a goal threat. I think the other point is that we need to remember is come March, you know, we're going to have a couple of European ties again in a busy fixture schedule, and if we want to progress in Europe, we're going to need a squad full of quality players that can step up and start. I think the interesting thing for me, like David said, is that Clement's trying to include everybody, but I think he's also trying to very quickly assess some of these fringe players to see whether they're going to cut the mustard longer term. And as we've seen that we'll touch on a wee bit later with some of the players that we're linked with, that's only going to enhance the quality of the squad. I think for me, Lawrence is a very clever player. I think he can find the pass to break the lines quite well. He does link up play nicely, but equally, the games that I've seen Silva and Cantwell start together, the two of them seem to be forming a pretty decent partnership like that as well. 1-2s off each other, moving into space. So it gives you options as a manager when you've got players like that coming back to full fitness, that you can have them either coming off the bench to make that type of impact, or you can start them because they're the type of player that will use the ball well and make the opposition do the running. Then you can bring on your speed merchants like Matondo, who could probably exploit that at that point, and then create a couple of chances or maybe even stick the ball in the back of the net himself. So for me, it's just positive to have options again. For long enough we knew exactly what was going to happen because of how many people were on the injury table and the treatment table. At least they're starting to come back now, and giving them minutes here and there, I think, is a big thing that Clement's big on. He the amount of times that he's spoken about how many players he's had fit at previous clubs and how long he's had them fit for. So managing the game time and managing the individual is definitely something that's on his priority list. So I think it could be interesting. But if I was Tom Lawrence, I'd be pushing for a starting berth. I don't think I'd be happy to sit on the bench and be an impact player, because I think he came to Ibrox to be a main player for us rather than somebody that just sat on the bench.
Yeah, I think the really positive thing for me is that the players we're bringing on are players that kind of do different things from the players that are coming off. It's not just like for like changes. They're players that are adding something to the game rather than just more than just fresh legs. So that's kind of positive in terms of having to break teams down and maybe change a game when needed. Now, into the second half, we were in control for the most part. We just couldn't find that second goal to really kill the game off. Now, David, overall, it wasn't the best performance, but for me, it was a hard-fought win. It's one of those games that if you're successful in a season, it's not necessarily given all the time on the end of season DVD, but it's one that you look back on and you say, that was a really important ground-out win. For you, is this an example of potentially a game where we could have or would have dropped points under previous managers?
Difficult to say, Brian. I think you could be forgiven for assuming that they might have slipped up under previous managers, i.e. the previous occupant of the hot seat. There's no doubt about it. There's tricky fixtures in the Scottish Premier League, despite the relative paucity of challenge, and there are fixtures that are difficult to negotiate. And when there's variables thrown in, like a swirling wind because of the setup of that stadium, the Greenhill Road, allied to maybe a bobbly surface that may well not necessarily have been rolled before the match, then that brings into sharp focus how good results can be. And it's the old cliche, getting the points when you're not playing well is usually the sign of a good team, and a team that's developing. So I think you make fair comment insofar as that previous Rangers sides may well have slipped up yesterday and may well have struggled to break the side down. I think it's important to bear in mind, though, that aside from the two shots that came off the woodwork, that James Tavernier was very, very unlucky with in the first half, and then obviously Cyril Dessers hit the post in the second half, albeit with area of deflection, but he did have the shot travelling in the right direction. I think that the slightly concerning thing was that the Rangers were, didn't create a heck of a lot, and the lad in goal for St Mirren didn't have a heck of a lot to do. So, there's improvement there. Fabio Silva obviously sat on the bench, and he may well have been tasked with seeing what the type of potential banana skin at a tight park away from home might look like for a Rangers player, and to give him an idea of what might lie ahead in the coming months. So, look, the manager, I think, is a pragmatist, knows what he's doing. He's simplified the message to the players. The players are buying in, and yeah, there's going to be slight wobbles. You can't be perfect all the time, but the main thing is delivering the 3 points, and that's what the team did yesterday. So we can't have too many complaints.
Rob, is it also for you a sign of how much we've improved under this manager, that we've got that ability to grind out wins when, as David said, you can't play well all the time, and it certainly wasn't one of our best performances, but even when we're not at our best, the team still rolled our sleeves up and came away with all 3 points?
Absolutely. I think those types of performances and those types of results demonstrate when a team's playing for each other. It becomes a bit of a, we'll do anything to get the job done. And I do agree that, that type of game, maybe last season or early in the season, potentially would have been a bit of a banana skin for us. And we've got to remember that was probably our first opportunity to cut the gap back to 2 points before Celtic played in the afternoon. So for us, it was a good signal of intent to make sure that we got the points to put the pressure on the team further side of the city, because we've got a league there to win. I think you look at the way that our team and our squad are going. Everybody seems to be together at the moment. It doesn't seem to be that way on the other side of the city at the moment. They won 1-0 yesterday. They go back to being 5 points clear, but it's very clear that as a support they aren't happy with Rodgers and what he's doing there. So these types of results are the things that we need to be doing. If you're not playing well, you've just got to get the win at all costs. 3 points are up the road, as Craig would say. We've just got to make sure that we keep getting the job done. And I don't care if we're winning games 4, 5, 6-0 or we're winning them 1-0, as long as we win them. Because if we continue to win every game from now at the end of the season, you're going to win the league. So it's just about making sure that whatever we do, whatever's put in front of us, that we find a way to win.
I would certainly take another 16 1-0 wins for the rest of the league season. I'm not sure my heart would take it, but at the end of the season I'll be pretty happy. But it's 3 points all that matters for me. Now, another topic I wanted to cover was next week's obviously the last week of the transfer window. Now, Claude suggested post-match, David, that we would be kind of busy right up until the deadline. We've obviously been a couple of rumours kicking about the last couple of days in Jeff, the Brazilian left back, and Oscar Cortez, the winger from Lens, the Colombian winger. So they're kind of strong rumours that are kind of bouncing around. Nothing confirmed so far in terms of confirmed signings. And we've got Silva and Diamonde. Where do you think we still need to be looking to strengthen in the remainder of the window?
Strikers a priority still. There's not been too much let out about any potential targets, much to the disappointment of a number of supporters. I'm not going to nail my colours to the mast on that one, whether which side of the fence I fall on with that one. But I think I'm assuming that Oscar Cortez is possibly a right-sided winger. I'm not. I
believe so. Yeah, according to the YouTube videos I've watched.
Aye, so that tends to tell a story about who may well be surplus to requirements, who may well be deemed to be making their way in the game and might not necessarily be a first team fixture going forward. Certainly in the short term. There's positions that need to be filled, Brian. Unfortunately, the manager's got to prioritise. Obviously, he's went on record as saying a left back's uppermost in his thinking. Now, we don't know the Ridvan Yilmaz rumours don't seem to be going away. There's obviously speculation linking them with Galatasaray today. I've just recently sold a defender to Bayern Munich for a sizable chunk of money, which presumably may well impact on whether Galatasaray decide to firm up their interest in Ridvan. And that's assuming that we do look to move him on. It may well be the case that the Brazilian from Fluminense that's currently with Apoel Nicosia may well be coming in as cover, and may well be signed with a view to Borna Barisic presumably running down his contract at the end of the season. So, to my mind, I mean, a striker's still a priority. Obviously, our wingers, people have been rightly looking for the right side of the forward area to be addressed for a number of seasons. We could go back to, Ross Bennett has never been the same since Daniel Candeias departed the parish. For me personally, I'll try to come to the point here. I think a striker's uppermost. Obviously, he's identified that the midfield needs bolstering. He's already done that. I would still like to see him in the market for a centre half, but I don't necessarily subscribe that would necessarily represent a priority in this transfer window. So if he gets a striker in, he gets a winger in, and he addresses the left back contractual situation for cover, then I think assuming that we get business done before the close of the window, I think Philippe may well be pleased with the business that presumably we're going to do.
Robbie, you thinking along the same? You thinking along the same lines as David around the striker?
I think strikers got to be priority. Ultimately goals are the things that win you championships, and league titles. So we need to give Dessers a hand, because we, as I've said previously, we cannot go into the second half of the season once this window closes with him as our main striker. Silva, from what I've seen of him, isn't going to be a number 9. So therefore you've got to have somebody coming in that is going to be able to help lighten the load from a goal point of view. I think I would be gutted if Ridvan goes this window, to be honest. But if that's the sacrifice that we've got to do to get some money through the door, but sign a very exciting young left back in his replacement for a smaller transfer fee, and then use more of that money to go and get the striker that we really need, I think that's the decisions that we're potentially going to have to make. And I'm not going to profess to be an expert on any of the players, but I think there's some really good threads on X from the Rangers Journal outlining both of them. And the boy from the left back this year has got 3 goals and 4 assists, I think, from what he said, in 18 games. The boy from Lens in the Under-20 World Cup, 5 games, 4 goals, 2 assists. He's played 40 minutes this year for Lens and scored and got an assist. So these are the types of players that I think Copper has come in to identify. And for the player trading model moving forward is exactly what we've been screaming out for years. Young players with plenty of sell-on potential that can come in and hopefully impress in a Rangers jersey and can make us maybe 10, 15, 20 million on the back end once they've been here for a few years. He's done it at PSV with various players and got massive profits on them. So I think from our point of view, it's just nice to be linked with players that don't play in England and don't seem to have like masses of injury history. And hopefully, if that's a sign of Coppin's influence, then it's only going to get better moving forward. Now, Diamondi, we've already signed, and I was shocked to see the fee involved, because I wasn't expecting us to outlay 4 million odd quid on a midfielder. But again, the type of profile of player we should be looking at, a boy that's come through the Right to Dream Academy, same way that multiple players that have gone for like 20, 30 plus million. If we can get a player that's even half of that in value, that represents a massive profit from a Rangers standpoint, which allows those funds to then go back to reinvesting in the team when inevitably those players do move on. I'll nail my colours to the mast. I was always against the Shanklin signing because I didn't think he was good enough for us. But I think in the Scottish League, he's banged goals in for fun this year for a Hearts team. That if we can replicate that form, I don't care about a player trading model when it comes to that signing. If he's going to score 15 goals the second half of the season, that's going to be the difference for us winning the league. And I'd really like to see him at Ibrox. If we don't get him, then I'll trust the manager in whatever striker he's going to bring in to help lighten the load.
Yeah, definitely think a striker's priority. I'm not as keen on Shankland as you, but definitely a striker. Robert, that obviously covers potential incomings. In terms of departures, rumours around that Cifuentes heading off to Turkey. Is that a good move for all parties? It just hasn't seemed to work out for him. It did seem like there was a spell just before he got injured, and it was a League Cup final where he seemed to be going to a bit of a game, but it just seems like he's never settled.
I think again, all hearsay, but if you believe what you hear, his partners had a nightmare adjusting to life in Glasgow. I don't think he's particularly found it an easy place to live. He hasn't exactly taken us to the next level, like we were told and we were expecting. And I think if you're going to get a profit back and you're going to get his wages off the books, that frees up, to bring somebody else in, then yeah, it's maybe one to cut our losses on. That doesn't mean that if he stays, he might develop better under Clement, but I think it's very clear that the manager sees 3, 4, 5 players ahead of him in the pecking order from a midfield standpoint. And if he's earning 16 grand a week, can we really afford that on a squad player? Sometimes with players, you're just better to cut your losses and recoup as much as you can. So he'll go with my best wishes, and it's just another player for the MLS that didn't quite work out for us, unfortunately.
Yeah, we don't have the greatest track record of bringing players over from there. But David, what about you in terms of departures? Are you expecting anyone else to move on?
Well, if Jose Cifuentes moves on, the only thing I can add to Rob's comments is that if McBeal had kept his powder dry, we could have signed him in this window and saved ourselves close to £1 million. It depends on whether it's a glass half full or a glass half empty situation, because we may well be 6 months ahead of the game, because it may well have been the case that Philip Clement wouldn't have fancied them in any case if it turned up in January, and we might have been faced with trying to move on in the summer. I'm really at a loss, Brian, as to who might move on. I mean, without repeating myself here, he has tried to foster a team spirit by keeping everybody involved. By all accounts, he's indicated to the players that on the quiet that who don't figure in his plans. So I don't think you need to be a genius to work out who that might be. So, like Rob, I'm a wee bit perplexed with the handling of the Ridvan situation. I'm not sure what's going on there. Has he been played to be put in the shop window? Has he been played there to establish a rapport with his teammates with a view to keeping them in the side going forward? That's a strange one. So if he moved on, it wouldn't surprise me. But if he stayed, it equally wouldn't surprise me. I'm perplexed that they've not made a move for Shankland yet. And I think that Lawrence Shankland would give the manager another option, because he can. The whole team could play off him. You seen yesterday how difficult the team found it to move up the park with Dessers taking the ball in. Not necessarily his back to goal, but they couldn't link the play all that well, and that's still a kind of side to Cyriel's game that's maybe lacking. You couldn't level that against Lawrence Shankland, because a lot of his games built on facing his own goal with his back to the opposition's goal and keeping off defenders and linking the play. So that could possibly work in Lawrence's favour where he be signed. Other departures, you're probably possibly looking at fringe guys like maybe Scott Wright and others that might not necessarily feature in the manager's plans going forward. So again, I mean, I could be contradicting myself here. There's players obviously running in their contracts, or the kind of the fag end of their contracts that are featuring still, and some aren't. So it would be safe to possibly guess that the players that maybe aren't featuring, like Ryan, Jack, for instance, might well be deemed surplus to requirements and might have been told privately that they don't feature in the manager's plans going in the long term. So it wouldn't be a surprise if some of those players were either their contracts were quite short in order to free up funds for other players' salaries, and maybe just to kind of to kind of tighten the belt and get rid of some of the excess flab from the squad, shall we say.
Certainly an interesting few days and potentially an interesting deadline day, which is not something we've said for Rangers in a while, so I might actually stay up to watch it this time, which will be a first for a while. Now, Rob, before we finished up, I wanted to kind of have a bit of a look ahead to the next kind of couple of league games. We've got 3 league games at home. Now, with the momentum that we've got behind us since the winter break, does this present an ideal opportunity for us to just pile on that pressure at the top of the league?
Absolutely. If you look at 2 of those fixtures, we're going to be playing Livingston and Ross County. You know, they're teams that, especially at Ibrox, we should be scalping. You know, and the only potential banana skin there is the Aberdeen game. But I think we're a different animal to when we played them at Ibrox the last time. I would be very disappointed if we didn't come away with 9 points for those 3 games. You know, I think that Livy, you know, we've already beaten them twice at Ibrox this year by 4 goals. I think that Clermont has got this team playing in a way that we hadn't been previously. So I definitely think that it's a great opportunity for us to continue to pile the pressure on, because I guarantee, you know, if we manage to get that back to 2 points after we've got this game in hand played, or even better yet, if they slip up in between now and the middle of February, end of February, their fans will be all over the place. It'll be Sharkgate all over again. It'll be brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully that's the case. David, what about you? Is this just a case of 9 points is an absolute must?
It's 3 games at home. You've got to win your home games, Brian. It's as simple as that. We owe Aberdeen a doing in the league. They're overdue on. So, but first things first, we've got to take care of Livingston. Davy Martindale is obviously his back's against the wall. They're fighting for their lives. He went in record after the defeat to Dundee yesterday. That it's championship level stuff. So they'll be looking seriously to put that right at Ibrox, and they'll be looking at the game and saying there's no better challenge for the players to come and spoil the party. So that undoubtedly shifts focus onto ourselves, and whether the mindset's right, the application levels are right. And I think we've seen enough for the manager that we can. One blip aside, which happened to be against Aberdeen at Pittodrie, that we've come away from most games under Philip Clement, and we've never really questioned the kind of mindset going into the game. So let's just hope that continues. Obviously Tuesday night game, and then we've got the Scottish Cup game against Ayr United before we take on County at Ibrox. But yeah, it's imperative that we come away with 9 points. If we want to win the title, if we have serious aspirations of winning the title, we want that gap cut to 2 points minimum, and anything less than that, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm going to be quite blunt here. Anything less is just going to be a failure, and I don't think the manager will accept it. Brian, I think that's the heartening thing from our perspective as supporters, that we've got faith in the guy that's picking his side, that he's not going to tolerate that the standards must be kept high. And if he can get a few bodies in this week, or at least a couple, namely a striker, to maybe set the cat amongst the pigeons. Just general competition for players, elevate the level. I mean, we've looking back to previous transfer windows, we've brought in players on occasion that have elevated the level in terms of training, and that's lifted the players that are already in the build. If that can happen again, and we can kick on, and we can start to gel and bed some of these signings in, and hopefully improve in performances, then that augurs well for the spring months and when the clocks go forward.
And talking about putting pressure on as well. You know, if you look at that Aberdeen game, we've got Ibrox. We're playing on the Tuesday night. If we win that, it goes back to 2 points. Assuming we both beat our opposition at the weekend. You know, Celtic then need to go to Hibs at Easter Road. You know, that's a pressure game for them at that point. You know, an away fixture in Easter Road, the team aren't particularly playing well. All of a sudden, you know, they realise they've got somebody yapping at their heels. And then we've obviously then, if they get beat there, we've got the opportunity to go top if we beat Ross County. So, you know, it is really all to play for. Like you say, we've got to make sure that we win those next 3 home games, because that could be a real turning point in the season.
And then to add to that, you know, if the next game's against Hearts at Ibrox, if we go in and take care of Hearts, then it's game on, isn't it?
Yep.
Definitely, for me, this is a crucial point in the season where kind of teams that believe they should be champions, they just go on a run. They go on a run of win after win after win during this time of season. And this is when, I think this is the period in the season where champions are made. In terms of teams being able to show their mettle and just go on win after win after win. So hopefully we can do that, and there's plenty more to come. Right, I think we'll call it time there. All that's left for me to do is thank my guests. Rob, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us, and thanks to everybody for watching and listening.
David, thanks as always.
Pleasure as always, Brian. Cheers, Rob. Cheers to the listeners and the viewers.
As well as being live tonight, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher. And we would ask that you leave us a rating on your preferred podcasting app. The pod will be back next Sunday evening to review all of the action from the weekend's match against Livingston at Ibrox. Until next time, bye for now.